Chapter 1. The crystal chandelier in the banquet hall still glittered behind us as Eric eagerly severed our mate bond. The moment the silver runes extinguished in his palm, I saw a long-lost light in his eyes, the relief of finally being free. I need to go pack my things. Of course, I nodded with a smile. He frowned, studying me. You've changed. Oh. I tilted my head. How so? I thought there would at least be an argument. His voice trailed off. What, like a shrew crying and pulling at your sleeve? Or kneeling with the child to beg you? I let out a soft laugh. Hurry and pack. Doesn't Lucia's flight land at 8? The mansion was eerily quiet in the twilight. The child slept soundly in the crib. Eric stood by the bed, his shadow elongated by the bedside lamp. Have you decided on a name? His fingers hovered over the baby but never touched her. Gianna Brown, I emphasized the surname deliberately. May the moon goddess bless her to be a merciful child. Brown. His brows knitted together. She has Davis blood. I smiled at him. Clause 3 of the divorce agreement is clear, the child stays with me. Seeing his stiff expression, I added, but you can visit her anytime. Blood is thicker than water, after all. He sighed, finally showing a trace of guilt. I'll pay the child support on time. Don't bother, I cut him off. The Brown family isn't short on money to raise a child. Keep it for Lucia's engagement ring. Eric glanced at his phone. All right then. Goodbye. Yeah, goodbye. As he disappeared into the night with his suitcase, I leaned against the door, took a deep breath, and immediately pulled out my phone to block all his contacts. Over the next week, I quickly sold 3 properties from the Takaya pack at 5% below market price. With the money, I bought a small house with a garden in my parents' Kovac pack outright and invested the rest in Northern Silver Mine shares. Then, an unknown number called me. Is this Mila? This is Lucia Miller. Why would Lucia Miller be calling me? I spoke slowly. Yes, it's me. What can I do for you? She sounded anxious. Eric, he took a medical team to the front lines and got a silver wound. My blood type doesn't match his. Can you come and donate blood? I stirred the black tea in my cup slowly. Is the blood bank running low? Her voice choked up on the other end. I don't know the situation. I just returned to the pack not long ago. I don't know any blood bank officials. You're the only one I know. Please, save him. For the sake of your past bond. Past. I set down my teacup. I'm sorry, Ms. Miller, Eric and I have no relationship anymore. You've got the wrong person. He formed a new mate bond with you the day after our divorce, and now you remember his ex-wife. Please. She kept crying as if she hadn't heard me. Darling, I said patiently. From what I know, Eric doesn't have a rare blood type among wolves. The blood bank has plenty. Besides, your husband is the hospital director himself. Instead of wasting time here, you should go find his staff doctors, not me. With that, I hung up quickly. Chapter 2. I met Eric at my coming-of-age ceremony. When Eric Davis walked through the crowd toward me, I felt a dangerous, thrilling tension, that fatal attraction from destiny. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his muscle lines faintly visible beneath the fabric, his movements carrying the elegance unique to high society. But he was already 25. A wolf man without a mate at 25 surely had a rich romantic history. How many girlfriends have you had? I swayed my champagne glass, deliberately tapping the rim against his tie pin. The redness at the tips of his ears surprised me. To be honest. You're the first. A virgin. I couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny about waiting for your fated mate? He frowned, looking offended. I later learned he was indeed waiting, just not for me. His courtship was intensely suffocating. When he knelt under the full moon to propose, I thought I'd found a fairy tale romance. After marriage, we moved to the Takaya pack. Though the Davis family guarded a declining coal mining business, Eric was passionate about healthcare. I used the Brown family's medical resources to help him establish the pack hospital. What should we name the hospital? I hovered the pen over the registration documents, turning to ask him. Lucia's Sanctuary, he answered without hesitation, his eyes suspiciously bright. Back then, I naively thought the name symbolized hope and sanctuary, happy that my mate was such a kind man. The truth surfaced on our third anniversary. When the servants carried a dead drunk Eric home, he kept calling that name, Lucia. I miss you so much. Please don't go. I stayed by his bedside all night, watching him vomit relentlessly. When the morning sun shone in, he touched my haggard face. You've worked hard, dear. Last night, I heard you calling Lucia's name repeatedly. Who is Lucia? My directness caught him off guard. Eric didn't expect me to ask so bluntly. He bolted upright in bed. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Lucia and I aren't what you think. We're just childhood friends. We lost contact after she went to the Dawn Star Pack for studies. Disappointment drenched me like ice water. Then why do you go to the Dawn Star Pack for business trips every year? I stared at his face, suddenly finding it utterly unfamiliar. His silence was deafening. From then on, Eric and I became strangers living under the same roof. Until the physical exam 2 months later, when 2 lines on the pregnancy test broke the stalemate between us. For the child's sake, I considered giving him a chance. I didn't want the pain of severing the mate bond, nor did I want my child born without a father. I'm going to be a dad. Eric held the ultrasound photo like a boy with a new toy, lifting me and spinning me around. Do you even care? I broke free from his embrace. Of course. His smile was perfect. You two are the most important people to me. Chapter 3. But greater hope leads to greater disappointment. Eric placed me in the best VIP room at the Pack Hospital. As my due date neared, I lay in bed all day, but Eric rarely visited, even though it was just 1 floor below his office. The hospital can't manage without me right now. You should rest. There's a lot I need to handle. I'll visit when I have time. He was always in a rush. On the day of delivery, 16 hours of labor pains made me bite my lips until they bled. The person who should have been holding my hand never appeared. After giving birth, I lay weak on the hospital bed. Jessica, Eric's new assistant, was beside me. Mrs. Davis, your child is a healthy girl. Congratulations. I smiled at her. Where's Eric? Mr. Davis went to meet with important hospital investors. Jessica's eyes darted, her fingers nervously twisting her clothes. I stared at her name tag. She'd only been working for 2 weeks, no wonder she didn't know that every hospital investor needed my approval. What investor is more important than his wife giving birth? My voice was soft, but it made sweat bead on Jessica's forehead. Seeing this young girl, fresh out of college, I didn't want to press her further and let her go. On the 3rd morning, Eric finally appeared with a bouquet of white roses covered in dew. You've worked hard, my little warrior. When he kissed my forehead, I caught the unfamiliar perfume lingering on his cuff. She's so beautiful, his gaze at the crib was heartbreakingly tender. Her eyes looked just like mine. The pent-up tears finally burst forth. It wasn't an act, it was a tear gas mix of pain, hormones, and betrayal. I almost died in the delivery room. My sobs triggered sharp alarms from the monitor. And where were you? Having dinner with which investor? Eric's Adam's apple bobbed violently, his blue eyes filled with guilt. Forgive me, Mila. His posture, down on one knee, looked like a scene from a romantic movie. I turned my head, wiped my tears, and forced a weak smile. Don't say you're sorry. You're my mate, my child's father, the man I love most. The words made my stomach churn, but they worked on Eric. Eric started appearing in the hospital room punctually every day, bearing carefully chosen gifts and a perfect smile. Lying in bed, counting IV drips, I activated the waterworks the moment he opened the door. Remember when we first built the hospital? My voice trembled with sobs. To get your medical license, my father used all his connections. I kept repeating all I'd done for him in the past because I knew these words would make him feel guilty, ensuring he'd compensate me generously when we severed the mate bond. I also knew his patience would wear thin quickly, making him miss how wonderful his crush was. And within 10 minutes, his phone would vibrate, and he'd find an excuse to leave to see Lucia. thus, moving closer to him, initiating the mate bond severance. On the 20th day, as I brought up the time I pawned the family jewels for him, Eric suddenly smashed a vase. Enough. He tore at his tie like a trapped animal. How many more times will you bring up the past? You're more suffocating than any shrew. Met tears trace cold paths down my cheeks. Then what do you want? Divorce. The word finally forced through his teeth. Sign the agreement tomorrow. Watching his retreating back as he slammed the door, I dried my tears and checked my phone. What Eric didn't know was that I had long decided to sever the mate bond. Because he simply didn't have long to live. Chapter 4. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the dressing table mirror, fingertips lightly brushing my freshly applied red lips. Lucia's distress call was suspicious. With Eric's medical resources, he shouldn't need an ex's blood donation. I heard Eric is injured. I called his assistant, deliberately mixing just the right amount of concern into my voice. Yes, Ms. Brown. How can I help you? The young assistant sounded surprised. We were once mates. I should visit. The assistant seemed relieved hearing this. All right, Mr. Davis is in the VIP ward. Should I inform him you're coming? No need. I hung up. I wanted to see what Miller was really up to. Pushing open the VIP ward door, the smell of disinfectant mixed with a familiar cologne. Eric lay alone in the hospital bed, a faint red stain seeping through the bandage on his forehead. Mila. He turned his head, a flicker of light in his blue eyes that quickly died. How did you? I gave him a gentle smile. Miss Miller called me earlier, saying you were injured and needed a blood transfusion, so I came to check on you. A brief spark flashed in his eyes, then vanished. Thanks for your concern. I'm fine. Where's Miss Miller? Probably handling other matters. I see. If you're fine, I'll head out then. As I turned to leave, he suddenly spoke. Where did you and Gianna move to? Why? Eric's Adam's apple bobbed. I'd like to see the child. My earlier offer for him to visit was just a tactic to fuel his guilt and expedite the divorce. Now he wants to see the child. I didn't respond, walking out of the room without looking back. Outside the room, Lucia Miller stood by the door. I didn't know how long she'd been there. In the corridor, Lucia Miller stood like a startled fawn. This was my first time seeing her in person, more exquisite and captivating than in the private investigator's photos. When I saw her amber eyes, so similar to mine, a wave of nausea hit me. So, in Eric's eyes, I was always just a poor substitute. Ms. Mila. Her voice was sweet as honey. I didn't think you'd actually come. I walked straight past her, but she suddenly blocked my path. Her slender fingers gripped my sleeve with surprising strength. I truly didn't expect you to come. Thank you. I don't know many people here yet. I was just so panicked earlier that I called you. I hope I didn't disturb you. I couldn't be bothered to play along. I'm glad he's okay. I'm leaving. But Lucia Miller rushed in front of me, stopping me again. Ms. Mila, there's actually something I wanted to discuss. Could you spare a few minutes? I knew Lucia Miller had an agenda for calling me here. What is it? I forced a fake smile. The hospital is having cash flow problems. She bit her lower lip. When you severed the mate bond, Eric left everything to you. But this hospital is what he cares about most. Could you help him? For the sake of Lucia's sanctuary, which was also your shared effort. Watching him busily prepare the nursery, I foolishly felt hope back then. Maybe the bond of blood could fix this marriage. Looking at Lucia's expression, I found it laughable. So she coveted my assets. Of course. Eric left all the family assets to me, only keeping the Pack Hospital. In his eyes, the hospital was a perpetual gold mine, far more valuable than the other assets. Previously, Eric and I had clear roles. He handled administration and decisions at the hospital, while I managed finances. So he didn't know the hospital was a money pit. All these years, it only stayed afloat thanks to my family's cash flow. Without that liquidity, the Pack Hospital would inevitably struggle. With the hospital in trouble, Eric naturally found it hard to maintain Lucia's lavish spending. I glimpsed Eric's expectant gaze through the crack in the door. How ironic. He abandoned me for this woman, and now he expects his ex to save his legacy. Chapter 5. The corridor's disinfectant smell mixed with Lucia's expensive perfume. I mimicked her slightly trembling tone. Darling, do you remember how that hospital was built from ruins? I gave so much for it. I didn't take a single share when we severed the bond. It belongs entirely to you now. What more do you want? Lucia's voice was feather-light. Ms. Mila, Eric left you 3 properties, 2 sports cars, and 23 million in cash. We just need 10 million for cash flow. The remainder is enough for you and your child to live comfortably. Moonlight refracted coldly off her diamond earrings. Moon goddess, how could she say such things with a straight face? Ms. Miller, I deliberately drew out my sigh. Back then, investors valued the hospital at 280 million. What I took as mere pocket change compared to that. Mer fingers, painted with nude polish, suddenly clutched my sleeve. During your travels, you studied with shamans. Eric often mentioned it. He said building Lucia's sanctuary was to fulfill your dream. So I didn't take any shares, leaving the fruit of 4 years of work entirely to you. The cold wall pressed against my back. Now, can you tell me? What exactly is wrong with the Pack Hospital? Lucia's lace glove brushed non-existent tears from the corner of her eye. Operating costs are devouring funds daily. For the sake of Eric being the child's father. She pulled a neatly folded piece of paper from her coat. Just wire the money to this account. I stared at the handwritten account number and suddenly laughed. Who knows which luxury boutique counter that money would ultimately flow to? Honestly, I wish I could help. I pulled 3 bundles of cash from my wallet and stuffed them into her handbag. But all my assets are locked in a trust fund. Here's 35,000 to tide you over. Repay it whenever you carry. I saw Lucia's carefully crafted mask finally crack and her champagne-shadowed eyes flashed the ferocity of a predator. Darling, don't look at me like that. I reached out to adjust her crooked pearl necklace. If I could help, why would I refuse? I came running to donate blood the moment you called. Isn't that sincere enough? Lucia suddenly slapped my hand away, smirking to reveal sharp canines. Save the pathetic act, Mila Brown. If you don't want to give the money, just say so. This girl has less patience than a wolf cub on its first hunt. Pulled a gilt-edged business card from my platinum bag. Black Oak Capital, the first-round investor for Lucia's sanctuary back in the day. Their risk control director still owes me a favor. Her nails scraped my palm as she took the card, like a testing strike. You'd be this nice. Why not? I watched her subtly twitching nose. Everyone deserves happiness. Since Eric chose you, as his former mate, I choose to respect that. The hum of medical equipment suddenly grew shrill. I glanced toward the room's window. But honestly, Eric looks terrible. I suggest you schedule a full biochemical panel for him, especially a lung function screening. Outside the hospital, the cold wind swirled with snowflakes. I crumpled the account number and tossed it in the trash, then slowly wiped each finger with a disinfectant wipe. The scent of lemongrass mixed with alcohol reminded me of the night in the delivery room, the same pungent disinfectant, the same fake tears. Hate her. My laughter startled the ravens from the tree branches. Why waste time hating the mate of a dying man? After all, by the next full moon, her dear Eric won't even have the luxury of moaning in pain. Chapter 6. Under the careful watch of my parents and the servants, Gianna was now toddling, and I was able to throw myself back into my career. Late in the study, my phone screen lit up with incessant message notifications from former colleagues at Lucia's sanctuary on social media. These doctors, who had once fought side by side with me, were now struggling in that decaying hospital. For the moon goddess's sake, Dr. John's message was laced with clear anger, that Lucia is treating the hospital like her personal playground. Yesterday, to cut costs, she actually used shamanic herbs instead of antibiotics. Last week's appendectomy nearly caused a major medical incident. I gently ran my finger along the rim of my coffee cup, the small spoon inside reflecting a cold light. The photos sent by Nurse Catherine were even more distressing. The remaining surgical instruments in the storage room were oxidizing and turning black, and Lucia wouldn't even pay for their maintenance and replacement. How ironic. The hospital Eric treasured so much was rotting away bit by bit in the hands of his beloved woman. I heard she threw red wine all over the PAC hospital's funding representative. A message from Dr. Robert suddenly popped up, just because he asked to see the financial reports for the last 3 quarters. When my phone calendar alert chimed, I noticed an important date. The 5-year contracts for these excellent doctors were about to expire. I half-jokingly sent an invitation to the group, if, and I mean if, I were to open a new hospital, I'd join immediately. 3 replies popped up almost simultaneously. Their profile pictures glowed with steadfast determination in the darkness. These comrades who had once stood with me should have left that so-called sanctuary, long ago, a place that had become a joke. This time, I named the PAC hospital myself, Mila's Mercy Clinic. The day the bronze plaque for Mila's Mercy Clinic shone warmly under the sunlight, the entire PAC Medical Alliance group chat exploded. I was in my office reviewing the final few employment contracts when that familiar number lit up my phone screen for the 3rd time. Do you have to be so ruthless? Lucia's voice was as sharp as shattered glass. Not helping was one thing, but now you're poaching all our doctors. I slowly twirled the pen in my hand, its tip bleeding a small ink blot onto the contract. I'm not sure I follow, Miss Miller. Stop playing dumb. That so-called investor was a setup by you. Her hysterical shrieks made the receiver tremble. Now even the last 3 key doctors are leaving. The ink stain from the pen tip slowly spread. These doctors, I said deliberately, each one is a former military medic I personally brought back from the front lines. When they laid down their weapons to heal, they swore an oath to serve only the most professional, the most excellent medical teams. My fingers lightly brushed over the ink stain. And the current Lucia's sanctuary, I hear, can't even afford basic surgical supplies anymore. This is all because you took all the money. Her screams were punctuated by the sound of shattering porcelain. I looked out the window at the nearly full moon, a cold smile curling my lips. Eric chose to trade money for his so-called true love. What a romantic equivalent exchange. The dial tone after hanging up echoed in the quiet office, like a bizarre requiem. One stood and walked to the window. Moonlight spilled onto the lawn of the new hospital. The sign for Mila's Mercy Clinic glowed softly in the moonlight, a stark contrast to the dilapidated outline of Lucia's sanctuary in the photos. Tomorrow, 3 top-tier wolf doctors would officially join my team. And this was just the beginning. My phone vibrated again. A message from Dr. John. Just got word. Lucia's sanctuary is suspending all surgical procedures starting next week. Their last anesthesiologist just resigned. I replied, welcome to the new beginning. Then I turned off the screen, letting the moonlight plate my new hospital in silver armor. Chapter 7. Under the flashbulbs of the medical academic conference, Lucia entered on Eric's arm. Her carefully chosen silk gown perfectly outlined her slightly rounded belly, like a banner of victory. Eric started to raise a hand in greeting toward me, but was stopped by a sharp elbow jab from Lucia. I watched the man I was once intimately bonded to. His skin had a sickly gray pallor, his lips an unnatural bluish purple. His body beneath the tailored suit seemed like an emptied-out shell. Only the arm Lucia clung to barely maintained the dignity of the Davis family heir. During the tea break, I intercepted Eric by the champagne tower. Had a full physical lately. I handed him a glass of sparkling water. You look terrible. He frowned in confusion. You came over just to say that. Hospital matters can wait. My gaze swept over his trembling fingers. Your health is what's most important. Just tired. Eric took a sip of water, his Adam's apple bobbing with difficulty. Gianna. Is she well? She's starting to talk. You. Well, rekindling old flames. Lucia's sharp voice stabbed from behind. Her fingers dug into the crook of Eric's arm. Don't be like this, Eric defended weakly. Mila and I are long. I looked at Lucia's abdomen and smiled. I suggest you worry more about your own mate's health. Lucia stroked her pregnant belly smugly. At least my child will grow up in a complete family, unlike some. Enough. Eric suddenly growled, then broke into a fit of violent coughing. Lucia let go of his arm with disgust and took a glass of red wine from a waiter's tray. I watched this pitiful woman, thinking she probably didn't know yet if he didn't get treatment soon, the proud bulge of her belly would soon become a posthumous child. Who is more pitiful? That answer would soon be clear. Returning to my seat, memories flooded back. Over half a year ago, during that staff physical, Eric and I had our checkups together at Lucia's sanctuary. I was pregnant with Gianna then, and Eric had left in a hurry for a Dawn Star Pack project. I was the one who picked up his report. That damned report was branded in my mind like a curse. Subject: Eric Davis. 4.7 centimeters by 3.2 centimeters shadow detected in lungs. Suspected wolfsbane-induced lung cancer, mid-stage. Recommendation: immediate hospitalization and treatment. I frantically called Eric's phone, but my private investigator sent me photos of him and Lucia at a candlelit dinner. In the picture, he was laughing so freely, a smile he had never shown me. In that moment, I finally understood. Throughout our 4 years of marriage, I was always just a poor substitute for Lucia. That night, I placed the medical report and the annual financial statement on Eric's desk and sent him a text reminder. But by the time he moved in with Lucia, that stack of documents remained untouched. How ironic. To secretly meet his beloved woman without me finding out, he took potions from a shaman, and the woman he loved never warned him that those potions might contain fatal wolfsbane. Sudden applause from the venue interrupted my memories. Lucia was leading a coughing Eric onto the stage to receive an award. Under the spotlight, I noticed suspicious dark red stains on the back of his suit jacket. Given the rate of wolfsbane erosion, this new father probably wouldn't last until the first snowfall, leaving his true love forever. I took a sip of champagne, the bubbles bursting on my tongue. Last night, Gianna used her little fangs to gnaw through a new teething toy. Her blue eyes, so identical to Eric's, were always full of curiosity. When she grows up, I will tell her everything about her father, everything except the dirty betrayal, and the final image of this pitiful wretch coughing up blood on stage. Chapter 8. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mila's Mercy Clinic, the first snow was gently blanketing the parking lot. I had just signed the last quarterly report when my office door was thrown open. Lucia Miller stood in the doorway, her Chanel suit dotted with unmelted snowflakes. Her carefully drawn eyeliner was smudged, leaving 2 black tear trails down her cheeks. Mila. Her voice was raspy, as if scraped by sandpaper. Eric is dying. My child is going to have no father. She suddenly collapsed onto the carpet, her pearl necklace snapping, beads scattering everywhere. I slowly helped her trembling body up, catching a whiff of expensive perfume mixed with the smell of hospital disinfectant. Speak, pushed a cup of coffee toward her. What brings you here today? Lucia wiped the corners of her eyes with her silk gloves. The doctors say Eric has at most 3 months left. I want to take him to Dawn Star Pack, the place he loved most, to enjoy the time he has left. Lucia's sanctuary. She took a deep breath. I want to give it to you. After all, it holds your memories with Eric. Memories. I almost laughed aloud. Memories of her maxing out the hospital accounts on designer bags. Or using substandard herbs that killed 3 patients. You're not planning on coming back? I deliberately feigned surprise. Lucia pulled a stack of documents from her bag. This is the transfer contract. For 50 million, it's yours. 50 million. My fingers trembled slightly as I flipped through the contract. Given Lucia's sanctuary's current debt, this number was absurdly laughable. The unpaid bills to pharmaceutical suppliers, the medical malpractice compensations, the revoked department licenses. Doesn't the price seem a bit high? I maintained a polite smile. She leaned in suddenly. Lucia's sanctuary was valued at over 200 million 2 years ago, she said eagerly. Buying it for 50 million is a steal for you. A steal. I remembered the long list of debts for Lucia's sanctuary from the private investigator's report. equipment mortgage loans, staff back pay, unpaid medical malpractice settlements. This once glorious medical empire was now like a wolf corpse hollowed out by worms. You know, Lucia, I gently closed the file. Last week, a herb merchant from Dawn Star Pack came to see me. He said you still owe 800,000 for drug supplies. I slowly rose from the leather sofa. I'm sorry, Miss Miller, I cannot accept this deal. Lucia's nails left scratches on the contract. The price is negotiable. How about 40 million? I pressed the speakerphone button on the intercom. Don't say 40 million, I wouldn't pay 400 for its security, please come to my office. How can you do this? Lucia shot to her feet. That's the hospital you built with Eric. Just as you said, I adjusted my cuff, it belongs completely to you now. My gaze went past her to the security guard waiting at the door. Lucia suddenly grabbed a crystal ashtray and hurled it at the carpet. Damn it. Are you fucking impossible to deal with? You were so quick to dump that mess on Eric and run off with the money. I smirked coldly. The idea to leave the hospital to Eric. It was yours, wasn't it? So what if it was? She laughed hysterically. If that idiot hadn't kept bragging that the hospital was worth 500 million, would I have come back from Dawn Star Pack? Her pregnant belly heaved with her panting. What bullshit true love, he was just a self-important social climber. Her voice cut off abruptly. The oak office door was slightly ajar. Eric Davis stood there, pale as a resurrected corpse. An IV drip was still attached to his skeletal arm, a wrinkled suit jacket thrown haphazardly over his hospital gown. Eric. Lucia turned, nearly stumbling, barely caught by Eric's trembling arm. Enough. His voice seemed to come from the grave, but his eyes were fixed intently on me. Lucia's lips began to tremble. Let me explain. Let's go. Eric coughed, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. Don't embarrass yourself further. The corridor lights stretched their shadows long. Lucia's high heels faded away, while Eric's every step seemed to sink into cotton. Before the elevator doors closed, I saw him glance back one last time, not at Lucia, not at me, but at the bronze plaque on the wall bearing the name Mila's Mercy Clinic. I pressed the switch for the blinds, watching the snow cover the steps in front of the hospital. Soon, all these traces would vanish, like certain names destined to be forgotten, and those not worth mentioning. Chapter 9. The pine tree outside the window was laden with a thick layer of snow. The bronze plaque of Mila's Mercy Clinic gleamed with a cold light under the winter sun. The landline on my desk suddenly rang, the caller ID showing a number I knew by heart. Hello. I pressed the answer button, my fingers unconsciously stroking a pen. After a long silence, heavy breathing came through the receiver. Mila, it's me. Eric's voice sounded like it came from very far away, hoarse and barely human. I know. I looked out the window where a flock of ravens swept past the bare branches. I'm sorry. As he spoke these 3 words, I heard the sound of liquid dripping, maybe medicine, maybe tears. I looked at the faint mark left by my wedding ring. There's nothing to apologize for. The past was already in the past for me. The guilt of someone who no longer mattered held no meaning for me. Eric's sigh was filled with static. Lucia. She terminated the pregnancy. Went to another pack. She's never coming back. So. I interrupted. You called just to tell me that. Suppressed sobs came through the receiver. I just wanted to tell you I regret it. His voice suddenly became clear, as if mustering all his strength. I could have been a good husband, a good father. I could have been so happy. The pen tip bled an ink stain onto the notepad. Those memories suddenly turned sharp, me staying up all night changing ice packs when he had a fever, the shared lunches in the tent at the hospital construction site, the way his hands trembled the first time he held the ultrasound photo of Gianna in my womb. What's the point of saying this now? My voice was drier than I imagined. Mila. He pleaded, suddenly meek. Let me see Gianna, please. Just once. I looked at the photo of Gianna on the wall. She was learning to identify herbs, her blonde hair in the sunlight so much like her father's. That won't be necessary. She doesn't need to know you existed. I pressed the end call button, only to find my fingers were shaking. 3 months later, a lawyer delivered a manila envelope. Inside was a copy of Eric's will and a check the $5 million from the sale of Lucia's sanctuary. On the envelope, my name was written in a trembling script, the edges stained with suspicious brown spots. I had lied. It wasn't that I was unwilling for Gianna to know her father existed. When she grew up, I would tell her everything about him truthfully. But I didn't want Gianna's memory of her father to be the helplessness of a dying man. I didn't want her to carry that shadow. I didn't open the letter. Instead, I transferred the check to the Pack Children's Medical Foundation. In the donor name field, I neatly wrote, Eric Davis Memorial Fund. This was the last shred of dignity I could preserve for him.